Today's guest on the Winning Teams podcast, it's a two-hander. They are the authors of a new book that is due to come out in the near future, The Real-Time Leadership, with the byline of Find Your Winning Moves When the Stakes Are High. And God knows the stakes are high for so many of us right now. The authors are Kauffman and David Noble. And Carol, as I said, is the assistant professor of Harvard Medical School, also a coach of high renown. I go into a little bit more detail. And indeed, David is also a coach of high renown and has been named as one of the Thinkers 50, as one of the world's top coaches. But the book that they've written is a fantastic piece of work. And it's also, I would describe it as a great handbook and manual for leaders that they can take out, take it down, read through it, take bits out of it, and really practice it, because we really talk about the importance of leadership in today's world, and we say that many times, but it is so true. But we really need to make sure that the leaders we have are engaging the people, they're actually making the right decisions, and the tools that Carol and David have developed are really to help leaders make the right decisions and make the right winning moves in real time, because that's the business and the world that we operate in. And they share a lot of tools that can really help you to do that. And also, using your instinct, but also validating your instinct and making sure that you're doing that, but also being very conscious of the skills and the knowledge and the expertise that have got you to this point are not necessarily going to be those that are going to serve you well in the future. So it is about that continuous growth. But it's a great piece of content. I loved the interview with Carol and David, and I know that you will too. So please sit back and listen to the very interesting and very entertaining Carol Kauffman and David Noble. Today in the Winning Teams podcast, we're very lucky. We've got two for the price of one, and they are co-authors of a book that I'll talk about in a minute. But let me just kind of give an introduction. As Carol is the assistant professor for the Harvard Medical School, and she's also the founder of the Institute for Coaching. She has got the honor of being ranked the #1 coach by Marshall Goldsmith, and that's no mean feat. And she's been shortlisted as one of the top 8 leadership thinkers by Thinkers 50. David, again named by Thinkers 50 as one of the world's top coaches, and has worked as a senior advisor to Egon Zehnder and Oliver Wyman. You're both the authors of The Real-Time Leadership, Find Your Winning Moves When the Stakes Are High, which I love the title. So you're very welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for inviting us.
Here. Love the content of the book, love the messaging in the book. But maybe if I could lean into you, David, first of all, just to kind of say, why this book and why this book now?
Absolutely. Thanks for that. So, Carol and I have always believed that the world needs more great leaders, and particularly now, given how the world is going. So we want to contribute to that. And we felt from the very beginning when we started to work together, it was probably 2015, I think, Carol, right? That we first started working together. And the nature of our collaboration, we found, gave us insights that we wouldn't get by ourselves, and what we believe in have been validated by others, that they're fairly unique insights on great leadership. So it's been years in the making of the work and the methodology, but we came up with a framework to describe what we think makes a great to extraordinary leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Curious, Carol, just when you just when building on what Dave was saying there and saying, okay, there is the world is crying out for leadership in many different aspects of, politically, every other way, and business-wise as well, even religion. And there's been so much written about leadership down through the years. Why is it, do you think, that we are still so quite bereft of great leadership?
Well, in a nutshell, leadership is really hard and the world keeps changing. So part of what real-time leadership is about is that you need to be leading in now. If you use your pattern recognition of what really helped you last year, it's not going to help you this coming year. So I think it's so hard because leadership is such a moving target.
So that's going back to the old adage of, what got you here won't get you there, isn't it?
Which Marshall wrote that book, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that is true. But one of the things that I was struck in what you sent me in terms of that, because I appreciate the book isn't coming out for some time, but just the section you sent me was that you talk about being mindfully alert, all right? And you have your move model, but maybe you might expect whoever one of you wants to take it, to explain the move model and why this is such a powerful tool because it is a tool to use, in any given moment in terms of leadership. Because as you say, leadership is situational. You've got to be able to respond in the moment, and how you respond in the moment, verbally, non-verbally, and every other way has an enormous impact. So David, do you want to take the move model?
Sure. I'll take that, and then Carol can add to that. So we basically did this because too much of leadership today is around pattern recognition. So if you see A and B, you kind of instinctively know how to do C. But if you're in this new world where you might be facing an amazing opportunity that you've never seen before, it might be a big new job, it might be an opportunity to use disruptive technology, or if you're facing possibly the biggest threat that you've ever seen before, then your reflexes don't work. So we want you to transcend your reflexes. So we built Move to help you transcend your reflexes. So very quickly, M stands for mindful alertness. And that's basically what you want to get done, who you want to be as a leader, and how you best need to relate to other people. O stands for being an options generator. So we all know if we've only got one path to the treasure, that's not a good thing. So we want to have multiple options, or what we call way power, to succeed, not just one path to success. Then V is for vantage point. So once you're really alert to what your goals are and what your options are, V is a quick gut check. Is your vantage point correct? Are you seeing reality for what it is, or are you really distorting it through your beliefs and assumptions and personality and such? And then we've got all that stuff operating. E is, how do you actually engage and affect change as a leader at scale? So how do you take this as an individual leader, and how do you ramp that up to your team, to your organization, and beyond that?
Yeah. Can I come back on just going through it, because I love the model. But we say okay, be mindfully alert, but that's easy to say, right?
Oh yeah.
How do you actually how do you actually train people? How do you train yourself to be able to be mindful? Because in so many situations it's pressure, right? It's pressure coming at you from various different, places. And you're all the time looking at, okay, you've got stakeholders in any decision that you make. So it's tough to be mindful. How do you suggest for people that in that moment, you can actually just bring yourself to be that way?
It's a discipline. And the other thing is, once you do it, let's just say you decide to do it for one day. Okay, what you'll find is it changes that day. So to be mindfully alert, so you've got mindful, but also alert the way an athlete is alert. So that comes down to the three questions David said. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? How do you need to relate? So one exercise, I did this actually myself, is one day I asked myself about 80 times, who do I want to be right now? Who do I want to be right now? So let's say you're online at the grocery store and there's a person that is talking and it's like, well, do I want to be that cranky person? Is that who I want to be right now? Or it's the end of the day and one of your reports comes in and what they've done is shoddy material and you're really tired and you want to just say, really? Who do I want to be right now? Do I want to be that leader who loses it for this person? Or do I want to be able to rise above my reflex and respond and be who I want to be? So try it like for one day and see what it's like.
Do you find, I think it's a really interesting way, and of course that's building the habit, isn't it? But also,
Exactly.
is making sure that, you mean, okay, we can do that. I mean, okay, so I'd say, okay, I'll try it today or I'll try it tomorrow. But, next week, kind of gone on, I've got something else. How do you embed it into to become something that just becomes an automatic thing for me to do?
Let me just say one thing, and then David, you take it. One of my friends is this guy, Gary Ridge, who's the CEO and the founder of WD-40, the oil that
Yeah.
not squeak. What Gary did, he loved this question, and he actually put it on a poster in his office. Other people put it on Post-its, but how to find a way to hold yourself accountable, but to be reminded, because failing isn't failure, forgetting is failure. David?
Yeah. So I kind of go back to that old adage of how do you embed learning, which is know, do, and be. So when you think about it, when you read our book, you'll intellectually see the value of creating that space and being mindfully alert. When you start to practice it, you need that little jump start to start going on it. But once you see it work, there'll be a flash of insight and you go, oh, that's what it can do for me. So it can really hone my priorities. It can help me be the leader that I want to be, and it can help me relate to people in a really effective way. So once you see that flash, you're going to be encouraged, and that will kind of give you the bridge to keep doing it. And then, as our thought partner, who's a retired 4-star general, said, it's all about the reps. So it's all about the repetitions. So that's how you do it.
Yeah. And in terms of when you're looking at the engaging part, right? Because the engaging part is really, how you're actually, as you say, how you're going to affect change at scale, right? And that's really what you're talking about when you're talking about the engagement. And I think it was really interesting. I was reading I think it's in the current edition of Harvard Business Review, where there's an article, and I'm probably going to make a hash of this kind of explanation of what the article, but my memory of it was, they were talking about, what you're looking for in hiring C-suite, right? And they were talking about, it's about emotional intelligence, and it's about, personal relationships and ability to build relationships. And I think that, when you look at the engage piece, those two elements are massively important in that engaging, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
how do you see how you can actually develop those skills and those abilities within leaders to really do that? Because as the old saying is that the manager comes in your title, but leaders only come if somebody's following you. You don't get it in your title. If nobody's following you, you're not a leader, irrespective of what your title is. And so how do you build the skill? Because it is a skill of actually really getting people to understand how to engage other people in their vision.
So one part, I'll start. It's what we call leader's intent. So if you think that once you're incredibly clear on your priorities, how do you create a followership around that? So many leaders, and it's shocking, this is how Carol and I first started to work together. We were with a leader who had announced only part of his intent to his group, and everyone ended up fighting with one another and not following him. And so the leader's intent is, okay, where are we going collectively? That's straightforward. Why are we going there? What's the purpose? What's in it for us? What's the strategic value? What's the personal value for you as an individual to follow? How do we know we're winning along the way? And that's not just boring things like, well, we're hitting our financial targets. It's like, what are we doing that could really inspire us and encourage us to keep going along the way to this destination? And then there's a few directions there too around, okay, how are we going to do this? So this is the options generator. So it's like many times there's many paths to a win. Sometimes there's only one path and you have to prescribe that. But it's like giving them people boundaries so that they can work within that and figure out what's best based on the conditions they're seeing on the ground in the moment. So there's a whole leader's intent component, which is crucial to allow you to scale.
Mm.
Carol?
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
I like this is, how do you build the skill, right? And we've talked a little bit about practicing a lot. Part of it is a lot of times in coaching, they've been held back because they don't have this skill. So that really helps them get motivated. But we also have, I'll teach you our coach approach. We came up with something, it's called either Coach by Numbers or 10 of 10. So what's a skill or something you'd like to develop about yourself? And I won't make you go into much detail, but just think of something.
Cooking.
No, a leadership skill.
Oh, leadership. Okay. Delegating.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So this is what the Coach by Numbers approach is, called 10 of 10. So first is, I won't make you answer, but the first question is, so what do you want to work on? Okay, delegation. Then we'd say, why does that matter to you? And you describe why. Then we'd say, okay, John, if you were a 10 out of 10 on delegating, what would it look like? And really paint the picture of what you would be doing, what would the effect be, how would you be engaging, really, if there was a videotape of you, what would we be seeing? Okay, fine, that's question one. Question two, so John, you can answer this one if you want. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself now in terms of delegating?
7.
7, okay. The third question, the one that counts, is what are you doing right that you're a 7 and not a 6 or a 6.5? And then we drill that, like what else are you doing, 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 with the same intensity as if we were debriefing something that went horribly wrong, to really make you access what are you doing right. Then we'd say, so what could you do over the next 8 weeks to get from a 7 to a 7.5? Okay, and that's our coaching model in a nutshell. It's very powerful neurologically. There's a lot of theory about it, but it's what is your intention? So if you want to build the skill, if you can get excited about it, and this is my intention, and this is what I want to do, who do I want to be, it can carry on and get a motivation.
Yeah.
And then with the micro behavior that's attached to that. So that's when you talk about the actual change. So you can't bite off too much change at once, or it won't stick, or you'll be overwhelmed. So those are the things when Carol was talking about raising your score by half a point, what are those small steps that you can take that will prove out progress and that you're confident that you can do?
Yeah. And it's not trying to get me to a 10. It's just trying to get me to a 7.5.
Bingo.
That's right.
Yes.
Right. And that is the important thing. Coming back to the move model, and if I look at the move model, and I really like it, what you're talking about there, what jumps up at me is that how much are we kind of saying, don't trust your instinct with the move model? Are we actually saying, no, don't trust your instinct, use the move model? So what's the value and what's the risk of depending on instinct?
That's great. That's great. So I'll just say very quickly, trust but verify your instinct. So your instinct may actually be right, but it may not be. So even if you think your instinct is right, we would love you to have 3 additional options. And if your instinct, if you decide that that's wrong, then we want you to have at least 4 more options.
Right. Okay.
Can I describe the options generator?
Please.
Okay. So, we all know, you probably have heard of the GROW model, right? Yes. And so the O is options. Okay, but fine. What David and I have come up with is actually a template for options. And it's built on evolutionary theory. So fight, flight, freeze, and befriend, those are your reflexes. Then, as David said, our work is to get you to transcend the reflexes. And we came up with something called stances. Like in tennis, you're getting something to your backhand, you have a stance, forehand, a stance, not that I play. But the stances are lean in and really engage, and engage in conflict, for example. Lean back, observe, like don't engage in the conflict, but go to the data. Lean with, which is nurture and care for, or don't lean, which is to be still and wait for an answer to come to you. And maybe, David, you can talk about how people can work on their defaults.
Yeah, so I think it's you need to understand what you're most attracted to. So if you think about a situation, let's say it's an opportunity or it might be a threat, what is your reflex? So some people just lean into everything, right? You're coming at me, I'm going to lean right back into you and attack. But what if you just instead lean back and ask some questions like, what's going on here? What's your intent? Do we have mutual goals or whatever? Or another option might be to lean with someone and go like, hey, this is not necessarily a fight or a battle. I got your back. I'm with you. I believe in you. I'm going to encourage you. Or I might just stay kind of still for a moment and go like, wow, my reflex is to go right back in their face. That may not be the right thing. Let's see if something else just comes to me, and create that space to do that. So it's understanding what your default is, because we tend to default to the same thing when we're under stress. And you want to be able to recognize that that's your default, and then create more options. So recognizing that you've got 3 more options in addition to your default is just one way of doing that.
And just when you're talking about that, because it just occurred to me, because one of the things that I've often talked about in organizations is you see this pattern of making the same mistakes, time and time again, projects that kind of derail, and, it's always the marketing department or the IT department or whatever it might be. But, we always, this always happens, and then it does, right? And I often think that, very, very often, not the only reason, but very often one of the major reasons is that we don't have a good review process of after, a cycle or a project or whatever it might be, to say, okay, what went really well? What didn't go so well? And what are we taking from that we bring into the next project, that we don't make the same mistake again? And it strikes me that what you're talking about here with your MOVE model, you also need to do, I'm assuming, or am I right in assuming that you really need to build in that review process into that, to actually see in that model, okay, in that situation, where was I mindful? Could have been better. Where was I the options? Where did I go with the vantage point? And where did I go with engage? Is that right? Do you kind of build that process into it?
So three things, and then so I would say you do it prospectively. So when you're anticipating something, you're running through the MOVE model. I think you do it in real time, which is the topic of our book. And then I think you do it retrospectively to see what could have gone differently. But the challenge, the reason that things keep going off the rails, or one of the reasons, is that you can use the same playbook over and over again. And it's wishful thinking often if you're facing something new. It's like, this always worked in the past. I used to tackle this. I'd go fast, I'd make some small moves, and cumulatively everything would work out. And you keep deploying that playbook, even if it's something that's like, wow, I actually need to just step way back and maybe make one big strategic move here. But you keep deploying your playbook because it's kind of soothing your anxiety, and it's a bit of wishful thinking.
Yeah, and it's your comfort blanket.
And doing it with teams as well. That when you've done something, and let's say it's gone well, to debrief on what did we do right? What else did we do right? And then if it's gone badly, to say, okay, what did we do right? Where could we have raised the bar? And very small amounts of reflection are very powerful. Often even literally like 1 minute, like you've done something, give yourself 1 minute to think, okay, what did I do right first? Like, what did I do right? Because that's neurologically harder to think. Negative things are like Velcro and your brain will stick to them. Positive things are like Teflon and right by you. So you want to like haul back. What have you done right? And then challenge yourself. But even if you do it for 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're talking about here, I mean, it's great content. It's practical. It's usable on a day-to-day basis. So how can leaders really effectively coach their staff to make better choices in that moment?
Oh, David, I was going to let you go first.
Well, I think it's, it is being clear on their leader's intent, so that people know what their guardrails are and that they can make the best choices based on what they actually see in that moment. Then I think it's asking them to reflect on, okay, based on our overall intent as an organization or as a team, what are your priorities within that? And are you sure you've got the right ones? Because often we just kind of reflex and say, oh, I know what I need to do, but do you really? So there's a way to kind of take a pause and reflect on what is really the best course of action for me to do right now. And then to ask them to cultivate who they want to be as people, because Carol and I view a coaching engagement as a failure unless you come out as an even better person. So we love it when people deliberately, project their character strengths and cultivate new ones, and then basically give them the tools to interpersonally relate. Part of that is just role modeling as a leader. Part of it is, showing them models like MOVE and working through it with them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The part I like a lot, which I was going to speak to, is role modeling it. because so much of one of the things we talk about in the book is leadership. Okay, it's what you say, what you think, what you do, but it's actually, and there's a lot of very interesting neurological studies on this, it's what you emanate. We can tell what another person is feeling and experiencing. So really, we have something called the 5 C's. So if you want to be your best self, how do you know you're being your best self? What does that look like? And so one measuring stick is the 5 C's, which is, am I calm, clear, curious, compassionate, and courageous? And we all tend to, just like we default to different like challenge problem things, we also have defaults of strengths. And how do we pull on those? Like for me, I have to get calm first, because then I can't think. David, on the other hand, is always calm. So he needs to work on something else since he's always calm. But how do you really kind of develop that? Because what you project out through your attitude and mindset, Dan Goleman talked about how emotions are contagious, et cetera, and our attitudes are contagious.
Okay. Can I just dig into the M&A piece just a little bit more, just what you're talking about, because very often what we hear talking about is kind of executive presence, and I'm not trying to trivialize it in any shape or form. Like, I don't mean that in that way, but it's how you come across and how you turn up and how people actually experience you more than just kind of what your words are saying or what your actions look like. How do you develop it? Is it about using the C's that you're talking about? Is that a tool to actually create that presence that you're looking for?
It's one of them, yes. Like if you're going to go into a meeting, David, do you want to give the example of going through the 5 C's with the guy who was like, someone was about to quit and what he did?
Sure, that's actually a great one, and it shows the power of what you can emanate, but it also shows how you can actually make a game-changing behavioral move very quickly. So one CEO, very smart person, private equity portfolio company. I had a few minutes with him before we went into an exco meeting where one of his leaders was going to resign for personal reasons. So I asked him, scale of 1 to 10, how calm are you right now? And he said, 10, I'm always calm. Great. Scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you about learning about new things, about people, about yourself, making positive change? 10, I'm always curious. Okay, how clear is your thinking right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it like really sharp or a bit fuzzy? 10, I'm always incredibly clear. So then I said, okay, just one more question in 2 parts. How compassionate are you right now? Scale of 1 to 10, first towards yourself and then towards your team. And that just floored him. And he said, I'm low on that. So I said, great. Can you just visualize what it would be like to step into a 10 out of 10 on that? Like, when have you been like that with family, with close loved ones or whatever? He goes, yeah, let's go into the meeting. So we walk into the meeting. It's a group where the CFO is resigning because he wants to take care of his dad, who's in his last stages of life. And in the middle of the resignation speech, the CFO starts to weep uncontrollably. And no one knows what to do in that room. Everyone wishes they were somewhere else. They're all like the freeze mode that Carol mentioned. And so my CEO just sat there for 10 seconds, and then he got up, walked over to him, and put his arms around him. And when we walked out of the room, that completely changed the nature of the interaction. It completely comforted the CFO. It changed the dynamic in the room. And he said, I never would have done that without that exercise. And that was a game changer. So that's how powerful it can be.
It's a great story and very powerful. And it also, because one of the things that I was interested in what I was reading there was that you talk about kindness, that it's that being a key to effective leadership, and the story you've just told is just a wonderful example of that. It's not kindness is not something that you see being talked about in the same sentence as leadership very often. Why do you think that is? I mean, I think I would have a view, but I'd be interested to hear your view.
Well, I think it's starting to shift because of Amy Edmondson and the work at Harvard Business School around the power of psychological safety, which we believe you should do, managing psychological safety up, psychological safety to others, and to those that work for you. And Jane Dutton at the University of Michigan has also done a lot of work on high quality relationships. So what's happening, and it's going to start, trickling through the leadership, is that, okay, this sounds really crass, so please forgive me. There's really good money in good relationships. If you really can have good relationships, you will be more profitable. You will have more engagement. You will have more customer satisfaction. You will have better performance reviews. There's a lot of bottom line reasons to really create warm, safe teams and to have those ripple down through an organization.
And that doesn't mean you're soft in any way. You can basically lean in, as Carol was describing, but you can lean in with kindness, with generosity, or you can lean in like a truck. So you figure out which is best for the situation.
Yeah, because I think that, I agree with you, and I think that kindness is key element, but I think it's also, kindness along with vulnerability, which I think vulnerability is key to effective leadership as well. But sometimes we are not, that's not the way we're trained in the corporate world to be kind or to be vulnerable. In fact, we're probably trained to be quite the opposite of that, which I think, but thankfully, I think that is changing. Carol and David, this has been fantastic. We could go on for a long time, and indeed, we might very well come back and take other parts of it. It's been fantastic, and I'll ask, you can tell us how people can reach out and contact you for further information, because certainly there's a lot to chew on here. But before I let you go, and since I've got the two of you here, I can get us two for the price of one. Carol, if I can come to you first in terms of a book that has had, other than your own, that has had a significant impact upon you.
Great. A book I really like, it's called The Art of Power by Thich Nhat Hanh. And you'd think it's kind of dippy, but it's got incredible business lessons in it, which you do not expect from that author.
Okay. And what was the impact it had on you?
It actually helped me. I'm a very high energy person, and it actually has helped me downshift a bit. And just reading it kind of settles me down.
Oh, interesting. Okay, great. Dave, for you?
So I think it would have to be a book by Philip Moffat, and it's called Dancing with Life. Philip was a CEO for a long time, very successful. And he left that when he was about 40 years old and became a Buddhist, and is now a teacher of meditation and mindfulness. All
right, okay. And what has it taught you?
I keep reading it over and over again. It's earmarked all the time, including on my iPad. So it's really about engaging with life on life's terms, not the life that you want to have, the life that you have right now, and inviting it in and dealing with it productively and in a fulfilling way. So a lot of that was the root of the philosophy of kindness as well.
Okay, great. So sticking with you there, David, your daily rituals, do you have them? And I'm happy to share them. And what do they do for you?
I do. I've got three, two of which are probably okay, and probably one is one is sketchy. But first thing when I get up, make coffee, and before I open up the iPad for the newspaper, I fill out my daily questions, which is something that Marshall Goldsmith invented in his book Triggers, which is basically, how do I intend to lead my life today and the things that I really want to work on? So I do that. Second, I do meditations. So I'll either do that for 40 minutes in one sitting, or I'll do 2 20-minute sittings. And then the third is I will watch the sunset on the Hudson River with a cocktail every night.
I like it. Well, Carol, follow that.
Okay. I actually, every morning I get up and I have a trainer who actually was one of these Japanese ninja fighters. And I have to every morning get up and do sort of 20 minutes of cardio before I leave my room. Like nothing. I just drink some water and do it. And I've done it pretty well now for about a year or two. The other thing I do is I pet my dog. I pet my dog, who was a violent dog and was supposed to have been killed, but I was a dog trainer, so I trained him and he's still alive. But unfortunately, he only has about 4 more weeks to live. So I will make sure to, the patting recently has been with tears, but he's been my kind of like calmer downer every morning.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that. And that's different. I really do love that. Dave and Carol, thank you so much indeed for being with me. It's been a great joy. Where can people reach you? Where can they get in touch with you? We'll put it in the show notes. But if they're listening now, how can they reach out to either or both of you? So
you can go to my website, which is View Advisors, VIEW-ADVISORS.com.
Great. Okay. And Carol?
I can be reached, CK, my initials, CK, at Carol Kauffman, 2 F's, 1 N, CK@carolkaufman.com.
It has been a great pleasure. I wish you success with the book. It's a great content. I love the models and the thinking and the philosophy behind it. And I wish you every success, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.
Thanks so much, John. Pleasure.
Pleasure. Yeah. This was fun.
Yeah.